recognize Dr. Moreland. Yep.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the agenda and get right to the survey.
Okay, second? Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we amend the agenda and get directly to the community surveys. Dr. Rosenbaum's here to present that. Any discussion? No discussion. Call for the vote. And we'll just do this by a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion to amend the agenda and move directly to the community survey, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no nays, the motion carries. We'll move to the community survey section. Dr. Rosenbaum, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I like these little balls. So hopefully the COAB members have read the overview of survey efforts relevant to the settlement agreement. It's like a, I don't know how many page doc, 6-page document where I try to lay out the various things that are kind of up here, the settlement requirements and then the different surveys. So, you know, the settlement talks about this. Within 90 days of the COAB selection, the city, in consultation with the COAB, will conduct a reliable, comprehensive, and representative survey of members of the Portland community, including civilians and police officers. It goes on and on. We thought it would be smart to break that out, and as I lay out here, that that there's a need for a community-wide survey that captures some of the things that are mentioned there in the settlement, but that there was also a need for separate surveys. You can't just ask, if you're going to survey the police, you have to survey them separately. And we've done that. I've done that in actually 100 cities, so I have some experience with that. And in terms of the citywide survey, now we have to decide tonight if we're going to do this, but and I'm hoping we definitely have to leave time, hopefully, for the subcommittees, because those are the ones that are, the one subcommittee, the first, I shouldn't talk too fast, I have to be careful. One of the subcommittees, the community engagement, was the best place to have the survey work discussed, we felt, because the survey work was, in fact, a community outreach, get the input from the community task. And there weren't that many people that signed up for a survey committee. I guess you guys don't like doing surveys the way us researchers do. But anyway, we hope that we can make that one of the things we get done. Now, if we're gonna, if we're gonna stay within the parameters of the settlement, 90 days from your selection is like April 26th. So that means the survey, our liberal interpretation was that the survey should start by then. I think it's possible. I put quite a bit of work in to help produce a draft, but you guys have to decide on that. So let me just quickly go over the different types of surveys. So the annual, it also says that the COAB's, the settlement says there will be an annual survey. So we're planning ahead at least for this year and then next year. And there is already an annual community survey in Portland, I found out, which, so we have to name it, police services or something different. And that focuses on all city services, not on just the police. Excuse me. So in addition to that, and that purpose of that survey is multiple. It's to to get their experiences with perceptions of the police bureau's prior community outreach efforts and accountability efforts, and how those can be improved. And it really sets a baseline as well for moving forward, but we see it also as a chance to get at the more core things that the settlement is really about, which is public trust and confidence in the Portland Police Bureau, and the work that goes with that. I could spend an hour talking about police legitimacy and how it's been undermined in America over the last, many years, because of what we call now procedural justice. That the failure oftentimes is about not the outcome of what police do, whether they arrest someone or give a ticket. It's the process of what they do. Did they treat people with respect and dignity? Did they treat them fairly regardless of their race, gender, sexual orientation? Did they give them a voice? That's procedural justice. There's studies now in several dozen countries confirming that when this is absent, the police have no legitimacy with the community. And so we've measured these things. I've measured it recently in 55 cities. And so we have some idea about how to do this stuff. But anyway, officer surveys we feel are important, but to get their knowledge of the settlement agreement and their understanding, but also to tap into their attitudes about the community and about the reforms and their views on use of force and things that are relevant to the settlement agreement. I've actually worked on a draft of that already. I didn't want to discuss that too much tonight because I kind of feel I think a subcommittee should work on that. I'm a little nervous. I think releasing a survey about the police ahead of time and in the paper, it biases their answers to the survey. I mean, we can talk more about that, but as a researcher, they're like, oh, I know what they're doing now, so we're going to give the opposite answer. We're going to say the right answer. You know, I know they're used to being studied and surveyed, but we just have to be, I'd like us to be careful in how we handle this. A partnership survey was done previously. I put it in the package. Portland State did that a couple years ago. I thought that was kind of interesting as a way, part of the community outreach effort. The police bureau is expected to interact not just with you individually in encounters, but to interact with groups and organizations. And that we can change those questions, move them around, or not do that at all. I mean, that's another option. One of the issues about, in these emails that have gone on, we'll come back to that in a second, but about what was wrong with the original Portland State community-wide survey was that it didn't address the issues of the African American community or minority community. I'm sorry, what's the word? Not minority. Racial and ethnic populations. Okay. It's going to take a while to get rid of that. But that survey was designed to be a citywide survey. We definitely intend to see more oversampling of the 6% of the population in Portland that's African American, the 9% that's Latino, and so we get more voices there. If you just take a random sample, they're so small in number that it's not a reliable estimate of the group. So that can be corrected, and how they talk about it can be corrected. But anyway, that's another reason to do what I call a context survey. This is survey number 4. A context survey is about people who've had recent experience. The reality is that most people in America, and I'm sure most people in Portland, 80% or more, don't have a contact with the police in any given year. That's not true in certain communities that are arguably over-policed, where there is intensive policing going on. The African American community is a good example historically, and recently the Latino community. So we want, and also because the settlement, and I don't feel enough has been said about mental health issues, because that's a primary focal point in the settlement, we feel that how the police interact with and treat persons who have had recent experience or having a mental health crisis needs to be studied in particular. So we are proposing a context survey on that. There is a context survey, by the way, built into the citywide survey that, with some overrepresentation, it'll capture people who, in the last year, that have had some contact. And that might be a higher number in African American and Latino communities. Let me get right to so we could go through the survey line by line. I gave you this draft. I'm not going to do that. The only one I give it is many of these questions, a number of them were based on the Portland State survey. I do want to say that I've been working with researchers around the world in maybe 6 or 8 countries. I've edited volumes that have nothing but these kinds of questions. And the Portland State people actually did a good job of borrowing, if you will, but also creating their own, the items that are pretty good and used here in America and in other countries. They've used some of my work, I think, and they've used other people's work. With regard to procedural justice and legitimacy on that first page there, if you have the actual survey, and other things that we also generally in surveys want to know how the public feels about the department's, not just the process, but the outcome. Are they good at preventing crime and and solving neighborhood problems and being responsive to our concerns. It does matter. It does affect people's overall satisfaction with the police department, we found in other cities. Not as much. There are other countries besides the U.S. where this is actually more important. In our country, procedural justice is more important, and it's different by subgroups in the population. The white community's more interested in being treated respectfully, and the African American community, for example, is more interested in being treated fairly, regardless of their race, and they don't want to be, biased in the decision making. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics that go on. But I've also tried to build in here a bunch of new questions about training and accountability and transparency on the second page. These are all how well the department's doing, from very good to very poorly. Some of these were asked previously. Anyone with an asterisk is a new question I just threw in there. And then the use of force questions down at the bottom, section 3, those were asked previously. Those were some of the ones debated during the email exchange. But the surveys, I would argue, do have accurate data in that a massive number, almost half of the survey respondents think that excessive force was a problem in the African American community. This section 4 on measuring visibility, engagement, and positive contact, I'm kind of, I don't want to say pushing my own agenda here, but I do want to say that you'll hear from me repeatedly about one of the things that needs to be done in policing in America and in Portland probably is decrease the number of negative contacts, especially in racial and ethnic and mental health communities, but increase the number of positive contacts. Nobody talks about that. Obama's president's task force on 21st century policing asked me to testify a couple weeks ago, and I made a big deal about this, the importance of creating positive opportunities for encounters. By the way, their report is out, so you guys, we might want to post that somewhere too, because the President's Task Force interim findings about what to do post-Ferguson with American policing is now available. And maybe you'll see the bad things I said in there. Okay, let's see, fear of crime. Oh, and this is the built-in subgroup of people with contact. They're down at the bottom of that after number 4 there. And there's 2 types of contact we generally think of in policing: police-initiated and citizen-initiated. Citizen-initiated, people calling the police for help, calling because they've been a victim of crime, etc. And police-initiated is police contacts, whether on foot or in car, they're stopping you. Oftentimes they're investigatory stops, and that's actually something I suggested to the task force that they need to work much harder on reducing, because even though researchers have been claiming they're a good thing. And then we've made sure, Amy Watson, my colleague, has made sure that we have some mental health experience questions at the end. You guys may want to help us with that. This is just a draft. Now, on to the difficult and stressful question of who's going to do this. We've had some fun emails about my recommendation that we use Portland State University to carry out the community-wide survey and a partner survey, both of which they've done in the past. For those of you who didn't read the emails, but it's in this document clearly that I've laid out. I'm not going to repeat all the reasons that I feel they're qualified. They're well-trained. They're, from the top #1 ranked criminology program in the world. They're smart people. They may not be the most politically sensitive guys in the world. I don't know. But I trust the validity of their work. The fact that the numbers were as high as they were in a negative direction convinced me as well that was accurate. And I think that I could respond more directly to some of the comments that were made on the emails, basically suggesting several things that Portland State, basically one of the arguments is sort of too close to the city of Portland and can't objectively write about these issues. I think the compromise position, I'm going to go further than I did in this document, where I said that we design the survey, we tell them what to do, they collect the data. I was going to write the report jointly with them, but we could write the report. I could write the report. The COAB team could work. That's another option. So I'm willing to say that is the best option if we keep Portland State. I'm very nervous about not using Portland State at this point because we lose probably at least 3 months by getting somebody else on board that knows these issues. The other part of it, by the way, for those of you who didn't read the documents that carefully, there's a methodology they use where you purchase these addresses from the whole city, you draw randomly from that, you also oversample, almost said minority again, oversample racial and ethnic populations, and you send out these cards, you mail these things out. We could use that data from 2013 for some of the questions. I don't think we should repeat all of them. I think we should do a lot of new questions. But as baseline, before the police really did that much, they've started to make some reforms. They've trained people. You've read the auditor's report. So there's a lot of things that have been done. So I'm not going to, well, I will say that one of the other comments was about the bias in research, and all research is biased. And biased, you know, everybody's biased. I've come to accept that postmodern reality, and it's problematic in some ways. I like to tell my students there's hard facts and soft facts, but that's another issue. But the point being there that the questions you ask could be biased, the methods, the way you write up the results, the way you interpret the results, all could be a problem. You counter that by being well trained in procedures and methods that minimize our bias, but you also counter it by having diverse voices involved at the stages, so that you say those are not the right questions. You only ask that question, you're only going to get this answer. I want you to ask a different question. Fine. I don't like the way you're analyzing that. That was a big beef with the Portland State. I agree with you. There's no breakout of racial and ethnic populations. So I'm going to stop talking, though, and open this up for discussion. I guess, what is the issue before us? This idea originally of us going through item by item is not realistic. I think that's the job of the one subcommittee to work with me. If you agree to do this and move ahead, we would do that over the next week or two in various forms and finalize a draft survey. The city would then work with Portland State if we go that route. If you don't go that route, if you want to do the survey yourself, or I could play some role in it, that's fine, but I think that's a different model. I think there's so much work to do here. I'm kind of overwhelmed by it, and I feel a need for us to get on with the million things that are listed that are in your work. And we have a list. I skipped all those slides, but our list, and it's a COAB, is as long as, or longer, you could argue, than yours. All the audits we have to do of everything Portland Police Bureau's doing. So I would like, if the COAB feels strongly they want to do this survey on their own, that's fine. One last comment. Community input can be sought in many different ways. I mentioned that. We're going to do focus groups and one-on-one interviews with people with lived experience and with bad experiences with the police. And you can do that as well as the COAB. You're free to do whatever you want to do. But this survey, technically, I'm trying to be helpful here, but if you guys want to do it another way, it doesn't say, I read the language, it does not say that we have to do the survey. It says the city with input from the COAB, and then it goes on to say that COCO will help analyze and think about the data or something. So if you want to do it, that's fine too. So we were willing to do 2 of the 4 surveys ourselves, which is the contact survey with mental health and the police survey. With, of course, all of those, the questions would be influenced by what you want on there. I'm willing to do work with Portland State to do this other one, but if you guys don't want to do that, that's fine. So I'm going to stop talking, and then
Dennis, may I ask you the way to do this? We'll take questions now from the group, and then this ultimately is a COAB vote. So we'll take questions. Who had their panel up first?
Right here.
Philip?
I do have a question for you, Dennis. First of all, I want to say I appreciate your work, and quite a bit of effort has gone into what you have done so far, and I recognize that. one thing, the mental health issue, that we're not focusing strong enough on that sample. So we want to really dig in. And what do you see as your approach for that? How do you plan on approaching these specific survey for the mental health questions and questionnaire? Can you answer that?
Yeah, good question. What I've done historically in police departments, I just finished this in 50 police departments, is we did contact surveys with people who have had a recent encounter with the police, a stop, and also people who've called the police for help. But we did not break out the mental health issues and incidents. In this case, I was thinking, and we're open to ideas, and Amy Watson, Dr. Watson, who's not here, is an expert on this more than me. The idea is that we would work with Portland Police Bureau, and any one of the incidents that was flagged as having mental health questions would be contacted, would be sent a letter, would be given a chance to call us, talk to us, with the understanding, by the way, all these kind of contact surveys, the police are not, they might be involved in reaching out because we don't want to say we know who you are, but they are not involved in getting the answers. It's very clear in the cover letter that you'll be talking to independent people from the COAB, whatever, about your experience. So this would be like an ongoing thing. Like every week the police would be sending out these letters. It would take time to accumulate a decent sample. I don't know if that answers. Oh, and one more. I know Amy, she's not here, so I'll speak for her. She clearly intends to have one-on-one interviews and focus groups with persons with lived experience. So that's more qualitative, in-depth. Surveys are nice, but they're a little bit shallow.
Thank you.
A couple of questions, if you don't mind. What's the cost associated with hiring CJPRI?
I think, well, right now, I think the budget for that, and I asked them to give me a draft just in case this went ahead. I think it includes 2 years, 1,000 completed interviews each year, which is what I asked for. And I think that was about, I want to say $85,000 or something. I don't know.
85,000, 2 years, 1,000 completed
Yeah.
per year.
Yeah,
Right?
it's actually quite cheap in the survey business. I mean,
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to
yeah.
I'm just trying to,
yeah.
wrap
No,
my
sure.
mind around.
Something like that.
What are the numbers looking at?
I'd have to check because honestly, but I think that's about right.
Okay, so $85,000.
Total, not per year.
Yeah, right.
It's
right.
like 40.
So 42.5.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay, and then just 1,000 people.
I don't think that includes the partner survey. We may have to pay more.
So this is just for the contact?
No, this is the citywide, which includes a contact survey.
Citywide, okay, so maybe we can break that down so I can get a better idea.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then that would include the oversampling of racial and ethnic minorities.
So oversampling, contact surveys, and what else?
They would not do the contact survey.
They
We
would-
would handle that through the COAB and through Amy Watson, and we would do that directly, as well as the police survey. We know how to do that too. We can do that easily.
So, just recapping.
Yeah.
So their CJPRI would be doing the oversampling. So does that look like the report that you sent us in the?
Would it look like that?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think we would write the report based on the criticisms we've gotten. But, I'm not sure your question there.
Well, I'm just trying to find out, what are we paying for?
Yeah, we're paying them to help us put the final survey in a proper format, get all these addresses, do all the mailings, do the follow-up call. There's like 4 contacts. You mail a postcard, you mail the survey, you do another postcard, and then you mail the survey again. To get the response rate up, it's a lot of work.
So your team union, Dr. Watson, is that it?
Yeah.
So you guys are actually making up the content, right?
Well, you guys are with us. I just drafted some things. I mean, you guys have, the subcommittee would say, Dennis, you got way too many questions on this, and we really need better questions on mental health. That's what we want. I mean, we have no real, some of those things, I'm telling you, Portland State did them. I would like to see some of them repeated, just so we have a sense from 2013. But we don't have to repeat all those at all. And I've already deleted some myself. And we've added all the ones with asterisks. So, you know, but you guys may not like those. Some I don't even, not that even fond of. So there's a lot of room for finalizing that. Yeah.
Thank you.
How do you want to do this, Paul?
Ms. Curley?
I just have some good questions.
Yeah.
So the original PSU survey, is that being used as a baseline for what we're doing now, or are you just taking questions from that original survey to use in our survey?
Yeah, the idea would be to try to replicate the methodology with a more oversampling of Latino, African American. But so there's kind of like two baselines. One from then, which we could compare with because they were random citywide samples. And then this is also kind of a baseline on new items. You guys add something new, it's our first time to measure it. So going forward, we know the police department still has a lot of things to do, more training, translating. I skipped over all my slides about the theory, which I also borrowed from Dr. Moreland here to some extent on her model of change, about how this change would occur. But we still expect changes in behavior on the street by police officers over the next few years.
So the short answer is no.
No, it's not a baseline. It is a baseline, and there's a new baseline.
Okay. So obviously, there's a new baseline with new questions.
With new questions, right.
But with the old questions, the old survey is the baseline.
Right. For
Okay.
things that may have happened between then and now that we can't control for.
Okay.
Because they've been working on some of this stuff for a while,
Yeah.
but,
So I guess my other question is, I think you had said earlier that you were thinking about us doing the design and then creating the questions coming off of this thing that you've given us, and then having the COCL do the write-up as opposed to having Portland State
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And that would then modify some of the concerns that have been raised.
yes,
correct?
that was the idea. And it's different than what I said in the document that I submitted.
Okay. So I just wanted to be clear on those things because I am concerned. I am trained in methods and I
Yes.
did used to teach it, and I have also conducted multiple surveys like
Sure.
you. So
Sure.
I am concerned about both the sampling, which I hear you're going to repeat, which is to send it out via people's addresses.
It's a big database that you purchase of all known addresses. And
Which
you-
assumes people with homes, right? So my
Uh,
concern is
No,
partially that
it includes
people-
apartments. It includes apartments.
Apartments are homes. Those
Both.
are people who live in a building, right?
Well,
So part of the people who are over-policed in our city are homeless.
yes, I
And
hear that.
So when we rely on a,
Yeah, no, we will not get them.
method.
Right, we will not capture them. And that will have to be captured through other methods.
so I just want to make sure that as we're talking about methods, because I am the one who asked you most of the methods questions, and I did read the methods section, I did understand it. I actually want to make sure that we are addressing the slippages in those methods, that we're
Okay.
not just recreating them without some critical engagement with how they worked. So one of those things is omitting homeless people, which means that by not talking about that, at least at this level, right, we are not capturing queer and trans youth who are over-policed in this city. Many of whom are homeless and transient and couch surfing.
Absolutely.
Facilities as well.
No. Go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah,
And we are also not capturing people who may have both mental health and addictions issues that I think, forgive me, I've forgotten your name, but Emmanuel, that you brought up the first meeting about how people come out of prisons and don't have enough services and then get over-policed and end up back. And so
yeah.
I'm
So
not
let-
so much
yeah.
saying let's redo
Sure.
what you have planned here,
Yeah.
but rather that as we think about the methods for getting the data we're actually charged with, that we think about the populations that have been left out and those populations that tend to be over-policed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that when we are doing our assessment of the material, sort of saying this is what our data set tells us, that we're very careful about stratifying those answers, because when I looked at the outcomes, it very clearly said, that people consistently, the overall group consistently believes this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that there's actually a significant difference in the percentage when you look at white respondents and respondents of color who are all grouped together and have different experiences in the city, but who are all grouped together in terms of what they feel about confidence, respectfulness, quality and fairness, decision-making, stereotyping, community and trust building. And at least on that question around community, it actually said that we were pretty positive on that, but actually, I think it was 23 or 32%, I can't quite remember. So I wanna make sure that when we get our data, that we're actually stratifying it and saying these groups
Yes.
are actually not satisfied, and therefore we cannot say that the city is satisfied.
No, absolutely. And I think that was the way they wrote that up wasn't the best by any means. And I think they grouped minorities because of the small percentage of sample respondents, even though they sampled them, and they did get the 6% African Americans, and I think the Latinos were 9%, but they only got 6%. They worked hard to get those, and we're going to have to even work harder to get those numbers bigger so that they can be separated. You hate to have 42 people in this group and then make general statements about them. So I totally agree with you on that, but I want to also stress a couple things about it and this addresses several of the comments in the emails. It says right here, a comprehensive citywide survey representative of the city. And so that's why the random sampling is there too. The reality is that the pattern you just described is true in every city in America. Every study I've ever done or anyone else shows that African Americans and Latinos are less happy with the police and the way they're treated than are whites. And it's also true that in most every city, between 70 and 85% of the community think the police are doing a good job. And it's probably true in Portland too. So this whole group is about that other 20%, and I appreciate that you're saying that. And I think the most important thing you've said from my perspective is that these surveys do not capture some of the most difficult cases. My surveys also don't capture the kids on the street who, they tend not to respond. And that the police in all cities, not just Portland, have gotten into a focal point on broken windows, kind of cleaning up the streets and moving people along, homeless people. And our society has failed to provide all the right services, so the police get stuck doing this. But the way they interact with folks on the street is one of the big questions here. So I think that you guys can talk about that. Maybe you want to do your own survey of that or a study of that, or we could add to it. But I think some field work out on the streets would be the only way to really get at that in a good way.
No, I think we agree on that, and I think that was the point that I had about using PSU, is that you can do this very large survey, and sort of answer my question in terms of who it was supposed to reflect. So it's not reflecting, the people who generally complain about use of force and kind of trying to match those numbers. It's trying to match the numbers of the population of the city, which doesn't actually give us a very clear perception of how people feel about being over-policed or under-policed, because the city as a whole is not over-policed, right?
Right, and it's not. It wasn't a study of African American or Latino communities. It was a study of the whole city.
I also want to point out that I am interested in more groups than African Americans and Latinos. So
okay.
So that constant reference is sort of undermining that a little bit. But my point is that I really want to make sure, especially since I'm not on that subcommittee, that we're thinking about the people who actually really need the changes that we're here for, and that we are not so committed to doing things in a structured academic way that those of us who do survey data and quantitative and qualitative research are used to doing and comfortable with, and we miss all these people as a result, because it's not that hard actually to get at them using other kinds of methods. And that's really all.
Yeah,
and I think we may be in agreement about that. We're just
Yeah.
sort of coming at it from different perspectives.
Yeah, no, I think so. Thank you. That's really
Ms.
good.
Medina, you had your.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to just say a little bit about, like a little bit more about like using, I know we're not using minority anymore, and then using African American and Latino in place of that, is that marginalized people, like you were just saying, come in so many different colors and ethnicities and economic statuses. So when we're talking about marginalized people, we're also talking about people that are really poor, that live in very low income communities. Like, I live near Felony Flats, AKA Foster Powell. Stuff is really bad around there. There's a lot of white people, and it's rough. There's meth heads running through the alley. They're all white. They scare me very badly. But I would consider them to be just as much of a marginalized group as I consider other people. Not on the same level, but low-income people are also marginalized people. Vietnamese people in the J District, they're still marginalized people. So there's all these other people that are part of groups that people are just specifically talking about, you know, the Latino community or the Black community. And so I did want to make mention to that. Also, young people, like, I think historically hold the least amount of institutional power. No matter what race or ethnic group they're from, they have no institutional power.
Yeah.
So a big part of this survey should focus on young people's interactions with police, because young people are the ones that are out on the street, who are joining gangs, who have to like experience all these different things with peer pressure, and who also experience quite a bit of racial profiling. So I think a big part of the survey needs to focus on young people, and it also needs to be set up in a way that makes sense for young people and gives them a chance to talk about their experiences, so it puts them back in a position of power.
Thank you. I totally agree. And we have all kinds of evidence that young people have more negative views of the police. I've done focus groups with them in Seattle and Chicago and other places, and they have special issues with the police. So there's no question. And policing, we have studies that show that policing is different based on socioeconomic status. The styles of policing are different. So all those things are important. We sometimes forget that the vast majority of people who are below the poverty line in America are white. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of people out there that are struggling. And so
They live in my neighborhood.
these are. Oh, and I just want to also acknowledge that Justice DeMunis has many times come up to me and said, young people have to be part of this. And I know he does work in that area, so.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment and piggyback on what my friend down here said about our communities, that it is very multicultural. We don't live in this black or white world anymore.
Yeah.
We live where if you have any type of status where you're filling out an application, you're either under African American, you might be African descent, you might be, so the numbers are not, they're not being provided in.
I see.
Right, yeah, so,
Yeah.
and that's where we are at in our community. And we also have in the city of Portland, that I've noticed since I've been back in Portland, is that we have a lot of folks from different parts of the United States. So, you know, people are being, I think they're just kind of getting by, they're underneath the radar. You know, so what I do is I've been out on the streets, I've been out on the pavement for the last several months, talking and interviewing with people and having them feel comfortable, because we've been talking about trust, you know, and so not any and everybody can go to specific areas and have that type of trust with the person. And so if a person is built on that trust, and that's why I put my name under mental health and also community engagement, because I live and I breathe that every single day when I leave from my house and I'm heading into my area, is just to say hello to that person. And then if they come back and they ask me for a change or something, I can get more about their story. It doesn't have to be directly right at that specific time, but for me, I'll just pull out my camera after I have felt that they've had some sort of issue with police or with their mental health, and they will explain it. And when you get to talk to people, it's a person, it's a human being.
Yeah.
You know, so the study for Portland State is students. You know, like, I'm not gonna just say that it's student, but you have to be around in the community. You know, you can't sit behind paper and pen all day and figure out that that's what's
Yes.
the problem.
I hear totally what you're saying. It's kind of what, I mean, is that, was saying there, and there's many different approaches. And the Portland State thing and the thing we're doing with the citywide, it's hard to get 1,000 people unless you just mail it out. You know, it's kind of like, but these other approaches are fundamentally important to drill down and what you're talking about with homeless, and there's such an overlap, right, with mental health and homeless and low income. Pardon? Houses?
Houseless.
Houseless, not homeless. Yes, houseless. That's it. Okay, I've learned 2 things tonight. Okay. But that we have to do a better job of getting, and you guys can, you know, there's many different ways. You know, scientifically, can we generalize from a few interviews to the whole city? We don't know, but the more, maybe if it's done somewhat systematically at different times of the day and not just a few people, we could get a good sense of what, but you can also have a focus group with people and have 6 people in the room for a couple hours and get all kinds of issues about their experiences with the police, and that's the kind of stuff we'd like to do. So, and you guys can do those too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So hopefully everyone got an opportunity to read this section of an email I sent today. I sent it late this afternoon, so I apologize for that. But I just want to make a statement in 2 motions, if I may, that Portland State did offer, or well, let me just say that they were very open to basically having any level of input and involvement from the COAB, and they expected that. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to remedy some of the, and address some of the issues that have been raised. But I'd like to make 2 motions, and the first one is to vote on whether we move forward with hiring PSU for the community survey. And the second is to establish the subcommittee to start the work on the community survey.
Okay, I'll take them one at a time if that's all right. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll take the first motion.
Can you guys hold that before, can you do public comment before, because we've already passed public comment, and I think you should do that before you make this decision.
Okay. So a member of the public has asked if we have a public comment section and that they would like to comment on this. I will ask the group. I'll make the motion. Well, I'm not a member. Maybe somebody can make a motion.
Make the motion with the public.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion about that?
Just in the interest of time, if that we could put a cap on it, so I don't know, or some.
All right.
Yeah, you guys already passed that time, so.
What would be reasonable? I don't have a response.
Well, let's take the first motion. The motion that's in front of us is to take public comment, which I presume is going to be to this particular issue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries, and so we'll have public comment. Now there's a question of we need to get through this. So do we have a sign-up sheet?
Yeah, over there. I'll grab it.
Yeah. Yes. Recognize Mr. Price.
Maybe members of the PPP. I heard there was a diversity survey created in 2011, 2012 by Michelle Ladd. Is there any way we can possibly get a copy of that? That way we may not have to recreate or look to grab any additional data if we don't need it, but also if we do need it, we can grab it. So that was the first question. And then my other question was, if it's not PSU, have any other agencies expressed interest in being a part of the survey? And if you would add whatever you would like to add to the survey, what would be the benefit for the COAB from having your input?
How could my input benefit the COAB?
Specifically related to Portland, Oregon, and our diversity and practices.
Well, I'm open to. I want to oversee if you want to go that way. My contribution is both substantive and methodological. So, substantively, given that I've worked on these issues in hundreds of cities, I have some idea of how to measure them in a way that the public can answer. So I have, on the other hand, there should be unique contributions to Portland. You guys should not listen to me on everything. You should say, you know, you want these questions on the survey, period. That's fine. And so the other methodological part is with Portland State, I'm willing to oversee their work, assure the quality of the work, and write the report so that it reflects the wishes of the COAB and not something that is insensitive to the concerns of Portland.
I'm going to stand because I can't see everybody. I just want to point out that our published agenda was not a timed agenda. There were no times set for each item for discussion. However, we have posted in the room a timed agenda. And so for members of the public who've been sitting here with the expectation that they would be heard starting at 7 o'clock until 7:15, that's the challenge that we have right now. So if it's 15 minutes that we're setting aside for all public comment, Mr. Chair, then I would encourage that we do that. We do that now, given the hour. It's 10 minutes to 8, and we adjourn at 8:30.
Yeah, I think you're correct. So I'll just go through the list, and we need to find a place where you can capture their public comments. Okay, so Teresa Rayford.
One point, and I want to be as respectful of each community member on this point, because we only have 15 minutes and because we only have so much time available, that we need to make sure we have some sort of protocol around it. And I think people deserve equal time, so
Yes.
I think we need to limit. Do we know how many people are on the speakers list?
There's that's just the sign-up sheet. We only have one person for public comment.
So in the interest of,
Okay, we have 3.
okay, so in the interest of time, I propose that public comments be limited to 3 minutes per speaker and one speaker, or each person only gets one turn to speak unless there are no existing speakers, and that we close the public comment section after 15 minutes.
Is that in the form of a motion, Corey?
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, but why?
We're half an hour, 35 minutes late, according to some schedule. And, you know, I'm fine with the timing and everything, but I think it's important to say thank you for your patience to whoever's been waiting, you know, and
Sure.
Of course.
I can't apologize on behalf of the COAB, but I can apologize for myself. So I apologize for any sort of
Delay.
inadequacies that I have contributed on the part of the COAB. But if you're talking to me, you could talk for as long as you wanted, so.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to have protocol with our speakers, 15 minutes, 3 minutes a speaker, I think, if I have that correct. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? No. And I think we'll have the speakers to the front where there's a microphone?
And can I just say before the first speaker goes up, in order to really accentuate and agree with what Abel said, that however we go about facilitating the next meeting, that we need to make sure that this does not happen again, because we cannot have people make their way out here on the bus or whatever, spend their time and then have them wait. So I'll be specifically looking for specific guidelines from the COCO about how we're gonna make sure this doesn't happen next meeting. I'm sorry.
Excellent point.
You're fine.
Okay, right. Thank you for that too. And I had several questions, but I'm just gonna focus on the one that's at hand, and it's in regards to the survey. And what I was thinking is that if it's gonna be $85,000 in 2 years to deal with one company. Where's the? Oh, y'all can't hear me? Well, this light right here is.
We can turn that on.
But actually, with the survey, I'm thinking, if you guys are thinking still about who to choose, that you would take more time than to make that choice today, because there's a lot of less expensive ways and maybe more innovative ways to capture this information. And one of the ideas I had was, I get the police alerts, and I know that we do a lot of stops data. I know that the police have a lot of interactions with people. So why not have a system that's put in place where anybody that's stopped by the police is input in their system that they get an alert that has the survey attached to it. That way your numbers will be exceedingly higher than 1,000 per year, and you'll probably get a more accurate description of the different relationships and interactions that they get with the police. And then not only to limit that access to the people that are being stopped, but make an application that goes with the public alerts or your flash alerts or anything like that, and give people the option to upload that app and just take the survey. We do it at Applebee's, so that's just a suggestion. It probably costs you a whole lot less money, and it probably gets you a bigger return on investment.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca Bruce?
My name is Rebecca Bruce, Executive Director of PDX Trans Pride, and my question is twofold, as well as a question. And the first will be directed to Dennis Rosenbaum. My question is, does PSU have experience with LGBTQ statistical sampling and comprehensive sampling of that population?
Should I answer that right now?
I can please.
Quickly, I don't know the answer to that, but I also think we have to be careful that this big citywide survey is not going to get at all the subgroups because of the sampling size. So we need to target through different methodologies, as we were talking about. That's a good point.
It's my understanding there's over 145,212 plus LGBTQ persons and families of various sorts in the state of Oregon, and approximately 75,000 of those persons in the Portland metropolitan area. And I also have concern about the bylaws being amended, stating that racial and ethnic populations are being defined, and I think that's the exclusion and erasure of LGBTQ persons as well, by mistake. Because we are sort of a sexual minority, and there's all kinds of us within that subgroup as well, and we don't want to be erased.
Good. And we certainly will try to make sure in the survey, if people can answer that question, if they will, at the end, we could find that out too.
And one more question, or one more comment I'd like to make is that over 40% plus, my understanding of LGBTQ homeless people, or excuse me, let me restate that, up to 40% of homeless youth in our community are LGBTQ, which is a significant sample of people who might be disempowered and disenfranchised because they may not be community surveyed through PSU.
May I ask a question? Sorry. Were you suggesting that we put within our bylaws the language LGBTQ community also? Is that?
Or perhaps incorporate Medina's suggestion of marginalized populations.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina Rogers?
Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Tired of waiting.
She's not speaking.
Were there any other sign-ups that I don't? Okay.
I'm Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch.
Jimmy, go get them.
I want you on TV.
Good evening. Again, I'm Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch. And regarding the survey, in terms of oversampling the African American population, since 30% of the people who have force used against them in the city are African American, I think that at least 30% of the people who are surveyed should be African American. And so that's very high oversampling. I'm glad there's some talk about the COCL doing the report, even if PSU collects the data, because the previous report was very biased in favor of the police, including recommendations that came from the PSU folks and not from the community, including stuff about officers having cameras, which is a longer discussion we'll have another time, I'm sure. And there should be a question, the question that is the old survey has to do with, I would call the police if I saw somebody being a victim of a crime, I think the question should be, if a member of my family were in mental health crisis, I would call the police. Because there's a big, you may remember an editorial in the Scanner right after Aaron Campbell was shot, where people said, don't call the police if your loved one is in a mental health crisis. I was very disappointed in the vote excluding formal membership, I guess, of alternates on your steering committee based on city attorney advice. It is just advice from the city attorney. I highly doubt anybody would challenge decisions, but I'm hoping that the steering committee will allow the alternates to sit in on these meetings and have be part of the discussions as you move forward. There's a 67-page document which I discovered up on the city's website in the DOJ tab that is a analysis by the police bureau itself about how well they've done instituting the settlement agreement so far, which apparently was not sent to all of you, and it has very interesting information in it. They changed the name of the mobile crisis units. The DOJ, according to that, has approved 2 or 3 of the items on the list in 2013, which is well before the fairness hearing and well before there was the settlement was entered into the public record. So I have a lot of questions about that 67-page document. I'm also glad you're taking, I mean, I know it's painful taking the time to do the process, but in terms of the survey and everything else, I think it's more important for us to get it right than to do it fast necessarily, and I hope the DOJ appreciates that we want to get this right. Because if this baseline survey isn't right, then in the future, you're not going to have any foundation to work from. I want to repeat what I said at the last meeting, that I'm very, very excited about this group taking leadership on this, where other cities have a monitor. We're going to have the community members weighing in on the DOJ agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Newell. Corey, how we go?
We have about 4 minutes left.
Okay. So I have been a member of this community for 23 years. I've been active in peace issues. I've been in protest march where I viewed police officers attacking protesters. This isn't even mentioned in any of the surveys. And I think that's a key part of the activity. Portland is known for this. The other thing is the police that are listed, I looked up the backgrounds of people here. I like to know how people came to this. We appreciate very much your time and effort on this. And I don't see it for the police, though. I haven't been able to find much background about their community connections. And I'd like more information on that, and a lot of people would be very interested in that. The third thing is, you talk about a marginalized population is the Muslim community in our city, and our mayor just made the deciding vote on spying on them. So there are areas where 3 police officers will be within communities doing things that no one has any information on, and I'm just curious if that is under the guise as well of COAB, because I think it should be. Because I think it's a form of prejudice, and I think it's an elephant in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. I missed anyone else who signed up. Okay, we have, Corey, how are 3 minutes?
We have 2 minutes, but I will move that we add an additional minute to give Joanne 3 full minutes.
Thank you. I won't actually need that much time. Hi, I'm Joanne Hardesty, and I wear a bazillion hats. But I thought one thing that you might want to hear tonight is about the young man in North Portland who was tased and beat up and stood trial this week. And the judge's verdict came out today, and he was found not guilty. This was a young man who was facing attempted murder charge of police officers, and the judge is quoted as saying that the police officers who testified, their testimony was not credible. And so I think as the committee that's looking at oversight of Portland Police, it is really important that you understand that this young man could have been in jail for the next 25, 30 years with the charges that he was facing. And it's only by the grace of God and community members videotaping police officers' activities that the judge was able to see the difference between what the officer said this young man did and what really happened on the street in North Portland that night. And so I am just here to tell you how much I appreciate the amount of time, the dedication that you're showing to this process, and let you know that the community is depending on you. They're depending on you to ask critical questions. They're depending on you to own this process. This is the Community Oversight Advisory Board. You are the ones who are in charge. And so I noticed that there's a lot of city staff that spend a lot of time at these meetings. The city does not run this process. You do. You are the people that we have picked to help us get through this process. And just know that the community is here to help you. Whatever you need, we're here to make sure that you're successful. So thank you for being here. And send a prayer out that community members came out with their video cameras, that they came out with their iPads. And remember, if you see a traffic stop, you do the same thing. Because just like that young man was saved from 20 years in jail, you will save someone else's life. So thank you.
Thank you. There's one other key thing. The judge upheld self-defense by this young man while he was being brutally beaten.
That's time, but
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's return to our agenda. We have the first motion, which was moved and seconded, which was to move forward with the PSU study. The context for that is it's a COAB vote about that. Is there any further discussion?
I do have a bit of discussion on that.
Mr. Murphy?
So I understand that the reason that we're making this decision at this time is because there's some expediency in trying to keep with the timelines that seem to have been established. I'm going to vote no, not because I don't necessarily have the confidence of PSU, but on the basis that when we have an open process where we can bring other folks into it to do this work, particularly the very cultural and ethnic and marginalized populations that we're talking about, having folks from that community who own businesses in that community to not be allowed to be part of that work is a problem for me personally, and I cannot sign on to that. So I do hope that this expediency will help us move forward with that, but I think it needs to be at least spoken from my perspective that the fact that African American and other communities of color are not going to be able to participate in helping do this survey because of that reason is a problem, I think, of shutting out the community. So, and I also want to echo points that were made by Rebecca Brewis and by Mr. Dana earlier about the fact that I always find a problem when I look on lists and I see the survey questions. I had a little bit of umbrage with your statement about not getting all these other groups. The LGBT community is fully 10% or more of the population of Portland. It's not a subgroup. We are a major part of this community, and that will be a part of this survey. I'll make sure of that. So that's my only statement.
Successful. So I think that at least my intention with whoever we hire to do this work would absolutely be engaging any number of resources to make sure we were effectively, addressing all the groups that are needing to be addressed, and that it's the most appropriate and robust and welcoming, transparent process as possible. It's not just, we're hiring one group and that's the only group, because no matter who you hire, then you are, based on your premise, we're excluding all the other groups. So we're favoring one and always excluding the other. But the idea, if we go into it thinking that we're actually going to be involving lots of voices here, is how it should be approached.
Thank you. Philip?
Yes, just real brief, responding to Corey's comment. It occurred to me as well that the deaf community There are approximately 4,000 deaf community members in Oregon, and there are a large amount of those members in the Portland community and metro area. 400. And there is, LGBTQ, DQ, as well as English challenged, drug addict, many different mental health issues, and there are no services specifically for this group of people in Portland. 1 out of 3 experience domestic violence, and so there are many things that I want to know about what police are doing to approach these specific groups and membership, and because I was also a victim when it came time for the police to help me. And so when you're contacting deaf individuals, how are you contacting them? How are you communicating? What are your methods? So I have my opinions about the PSU survey and whether or not all of the people, like you were saying, are more white, or they're so. This is one of the ideas, and I thought we should think about this.
Okay. Further. Corey, did you have another?
Oh no, I was going to stand.
Okay.
We were just talking, and there are alternative people we could hire, and I think that's part of what we're trying to figure out in here. And I think it's been sort of presented that this is kind of the choice for us to move forward quickly. And I would like to also sort of echo Corey in saying that we can slow down a little bit. I know we have a timeline, but we can slow down a little bit and think of the other groups that have actually done citywide surveys. The Coalition on Communities of Color has done multiple surveys on policing in communities of color. Mm-hmm. I'm sure AMA could help us. I mean, there are groups that are available, and I think it's particularly important to think about who can fill out a survey and who cannot, right? So the other statistic that was very disconcerting to me is that 75% of the people who filled out what is going to be our baseline have some college education. And 53% of them are college educated, as in have a college degree. So again, there's a bias to the sample, and I want to just say that let's think about what we're comfortable with in terms of who is doing our research and how we're doing that research. And that committee that's charged with that, to think about focus groups and qualitative research and access and definitions, right? And that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I just wanted to say, and I don't mean to demean any of this conversation, I think it's awesome and really productive. I think I'm saying that right. Anyways, I don't think Mr. Rosenbaum ever was saying that we had to go with the PSU survey. He was just stating that they had already gotten a little far and it would be maybe helpful because with the time constraint, they would already move on. But I think still with the community outreach and engagement subcommittee, all these concerns can be brought up and funneled into that pretty effectively. I think we've got obviously a pretty well good depth of knowledge over here.
Okay,
excuse me, go ahead.
Do we know then, and maybe Corey, this is a question for you, or I don't know if someone else can answer. Do we know that the PSU group does not include marginalized communities? Do we have that knowledge?
Well, I think that's a question for this gentleman right here. Because I'm not advancing any particular one group do that survey right now. I mean, so my only answer to that is I can't answer that, but what I could answer is in the context of trying to move things forward, I'd much rather, me personally, see us have a group, have the survey group put together so they can answer these questions on a more intentional basis and with folks really drilling it, than moving first and saying, let's have this group do it. Because even if they take a week to do that, let's say, that's still a week where we make a more informed decision. So that's just my thought.
Any more discussion on emotion?
You might have to restate it.
I didn't get a clear answer. Is there or was there ever a survey, a diversity survey created by the Portland Police Bureau in 2011 or 2012 from Michelle Ladd? And are we able to get that if it even exists?
Yeah, they have to, that would be answered by them.
Hi, I'm Kevin Modica. I'm a member of the Portland Police Bureau. I'm actually assistant chief with a very large branch in the community services branch, and just from experiential recollection, that survey was conducted by the Diversity Inclusion Committee, DELC, and I believe that Ms. Ladd, I can't speak for her, but you're mentioning her name. If you have information that she was the author, I do know that she had membership of that committee. I don't know if their survey results were published or are still available, but I'm sure that you know, our strategic services division could take care of getting that information for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Further discussion on that motion?
Senator
Gordon?
A question for Dennis. Would you say again, for the record, what is the impact, what would be the impact of not going forward with PSU as a contractor at this time?
Well, this is a good question. So, I mean, my own view of this is different than this whole group so far. I mean, I kind of feel like there's so much to do, and there's so many tasks to do, and I do feel that everything that's been said here is really important. And then my own view, so the quick answer is, Portland's, you know, if we don't go with them, my vision is going to take you another 2 or 3 months to find the right people, to get all of these different perspectives incorporated and move forward. I prefer, if you're going to do that, my preference would be that that become a job for the COAB, and that the subcommittee, and that the COCO removes itself, and PSA, Portland State, removes themselves, and that you do it that way. It doesn't say in there that the COCO has to do this. I was just trying to be helpful. I put a lot of time into this. But, and I do want to say, so if you go that route, we'll do it now, we'll get it done. It's one piece. My point is it's meant to be a citywide random sample. If you don't want to do that, even though that's what the settlement says, which is mostly white middle-class people that like the police. I mean, if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But I'm saying, and it wasn't meant to be the whole method. I still definitely want to do this police study, the mental health context study, and help with, and we're going to do focus groups and stuff like that. But this community-wide one, if we're going to turn it into something other than a community-wide random survey, I really feel strongly that I would like to turn that over to the COAB, and that I will pull out the COCO out of that. But that's only because it was meant to be a certain purpose, and we have, in the next 3 months, I'd rather not spend 4 or 5 meetings on this. I'd rather do the 100 other tasks I have to do, auditing the training and all the other things that are listed there, and not lose the time myself.
Can I just ask a quick question about what you just said? So what I heard was that if we work to get a little more diversity knowledge into the structure of the study, that it will no longer be a community-wide.
Well, you know that you're a researcher, so you're doing a random sample. Can you imagine the amount of oversampling I'd have to do to get a decent sample of persons who have hearing problems, a decent sample of people from the LGBT community? It's not going to happen. That'll cost you $500,000.
No, I understand that.
So it's better to go out and meet with them, focus groups, that kind of thing.
It's huge, and I do think focus groups and qualitative research, and there are other ways.
Right.
But I guess what I heard was that you were saying, if we don't use PSU in the ways that you have suggested, that we couldn't do, or that we're not doing, a community-wide, Portland-wide survey. Is that right?
Well, you could probably hire somebody else. And it would take a lot of time and effort to coordinate all of this. And I think that, you know, I just think that you, someone like yourself or someone on the COAB, should take a lead role in doing that. I mean, I think that's better than us spending. I personally, someone's got to do my job on the COCO. If I do that, I was volunteering to do it this one way, and if you guys don't like it, I was asking you to trust me that they could draw a sample, a probability sample, and oversample certain groups, and that's all I was asking.
And would you be able to ensure that their oversampling was larger than the first time?
Ye-
Because we're
yes.
talking about a difference between 941 white respondents and 30 African Americans and or Latinos. So, yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that we could make sure that they are also stratifying for queer, trans, and QT pop.
Well, no, we can't because there's no demographics on that. We who do have demographics in these mailing samples that these addresses within this area are 26% African American and these are 8%. And so we'd go in there and oversample.
Okay, so the baseline of the method of doing the mailing doesn't allow us to do
No,
those other things?
no. You can ask about it in the survey. And if you sampled 10,000 people, you might get a bigger number, but still, given that these populations are small, relatively speaking. Okay.
So I'll restate the motion and then we'll go around the room. So the motion by Ms. Jamison was the first motion was that was moved and seconded was to move forward with the PSU study as described by Dr. Rosenbaum. Did I get that accurately?
I just called for the vote on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if you're in favor of that motion, signify by saying yes. If you're not in favor of it, say.
That the deeper work around the survey that includes
Yes.
this discussion will be done in the subcommittee.
That's the second motion.
Yeah, that-
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you didn't want to just include it in the first?
It's not amended?
Okay,
Okay.
whatever you want to do.
All right,
Okay,
we'll
whatever.
go quickly on
Yeah,
this one, and
that's
then we'll
fine.
get to the second one. All right, so we'll go around the room. You signify if you are in favor of the
I'm sorry. I feel really badly about this, but I feel like what she just said is really important, which is that
Yes, to sort of be added.
because there's a lot of everything. If I hear everything that's been said tonight, they don't just want this survey that says how do people in Portland feel about the police. They want these other questions, which could be about, we can ask them about how the.
Ms. Jameson's motion, her second motion, I understood was to incorporate that. Okay.
Maybe consolidate those two into one, because that's what she's saying. I think that would then include all the
So we
richness
need a
of
friendly
this discussion.
amendment.
So we basically say that we move to go with PSU, that the deeper work around these particular subsets or cohorts will take place in the community outreach survey subcommittee.
Okay.
That's my motion.
All right, well, it'd be a friendly amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion about that?
Yes. Just one point.
Yes.
Dennis, I'm going to use the word trust here.
Okay.
And depending on how the vote comes out, if it's in favor of continuing with PSU, I need to understand that you will communicate with them what has been shared here tonight, and that your comment about their political insensitivity also gets communicated. An overarching issue and concern has to do with cultural competency.
Yeah.
And we're also talking about the investment of public tax dollars
Yeah.
in representatives of an institution who may not be aware, probably are not aware, of their own biases
As many
with
of us.
regard to this work. And that's an issue, that's a problem that needs to be corrected. And that is a message that needs to be communicated to Portland State University and this institute that they've established under the motto, "Let knowledge serve the city." Well, that's what this is about. They need to understand that they've got a deficiency and how that deficiency could affect our work going forward.
Right.
But again, I prefaced everything I said with trust.
Yeah.
The trust that I'm willing to extend to you in this,
I hear you.
in this matter.
I hear you.
Dr. Silver, did you have a comment?
No, I didn't call for the question.
Okay, all right.
And I just want to say, Senator Gordon, COAB should also have their own message around that. We don't have to go through the COCL to relay those.
I totally
I
agree
had
with you.
a very robust conversation with the director of that PSU on this issue, who said, I've not had anybody ever contact me directly with their criticism, and he's very open to that. So I think that there's lots of opportunity. But the main thing is to remember that the COAB should have their own message, and it is a future further motion that we have a communication subcommittee urgently crafted.
Okay, ready to vote, so everybody understand the amended motion that includes the motion to move forward with the PSU study, along with all of the deep...
Actually, I move that we have an actual roll call vote for this.
That's what I was going to do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we'll need to go around the room with a roll call vote, and if you're in favor of the motion as it's been stated, you would say yes. If you're against the motion, you would say no.
And who's recording?
And our guy right over there is recording it. Okay?
Okay, yes.
I still need process time, so I abstain.
Alternate.
I need more process time. I have more questions. No, I abstain. Or rather, I abstain.
Abstain?
Yes.
Okay, I need to count these votes.
I'll abstain. No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Okay, I lost my count.
Sorry, Judge.
Getting tired here. Okay, I'll take it by, okay. Ms., let's see, where are we? Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Okay.
Abstain.
Abstain, Ms. Curley? Okay.
No.
Okay, Mr. Gary? No. Okay, I'm sorry?
I was going with no.
No.
Sorry. Let's try to think about it quickly.
Yes.
Okay.
Abstain.
Just a minute, hold on, I'll get lost here. Who abstained? Jimmy, you abstained? Okay.
No. I'm sorry. No.
Mr. Murphy was no. Doctor, you're yes? Okay. Bud? Just a minute.
Wait, Bud was...
Bud's no. And Emmanuel, you're yes?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Gordon?
Yes.
Okay.
13 votes?
7 yeses. And 2 abstentions, right?
That's what I got, sir.
Okay, the vote is 7 yes, 4 noes, and 2 abstentions. So the vote,
And 2 absent as well.
yeah, yeah, so the vote passes. Next. So that is a vote by the COAB to move forward. Now, you had a, did you want to restate a second motion?
Well, I'm unclear if she had a friendly.
We passed that, but we
Okay.
still haven't established the subcommittee, if you, that was your,
Okay. I
that
thought
was your motion.
combined in the, to establish the subcommittee. Sorry, I was confused, but if you want me to restate
I
the
think,
motion.
I think we should.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I make a motion that we establish immediately the subcommittee, the survey subcommittee. It could be called something different, but that's their goal.
I thought it's already...
Yeah.
With names on, that's what we voted at the last meeting, and this was sent out. That outline, that's what I was saying.
made sense to me to go ahead and have this work. Aren't these not the final?
Okay, with one qualification, the group, there was originally 4 subcommittees, and we put the survey subcommittee because there were so few under the community outreach committee.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Stand corrected, that's correct. Okay.
Yeah, I may not have responded enough, but I read them all.
Mr. Steenson?
I don't think it was voted on. The memo says below is a draft of proposed subcommittee assignments, and I don't think it was voted on.
Okay. No, it was not.
Fair enough, but it was based on.
I'm not quarreling with that, I'm just saying it wasn't voted on.
Well, then we can fix that by motion.
Motion to vote on the draft that was sent in email on the committee assignments as listed.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, it's been seconded. Discussion. Ms. Gardner?
I personally would prefer to only serve on one committee.
Okay. I think we can adjust all of that. Okay. I think it's just the establishment of the committees. Okay. Lee?
It looks like my name was left off of the mental health crisis response sub.
You're actually on every committee.
Awesome, perfect. I don't see it though, where is it?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we promised ourselves we were going to get out of here. Okay, so I need any more discussion on that motion. Yes, Ms. Crowe.
I just wanted to say that I am not on that committee.
Uh-huh.
I'm on the mental health committee, which is sort of the reason that I'm here at the table. So if people want help or have questions or anything around survey data or focus groups or any of that stuff, I'm happy to help, but I can't be on 2 committees.
Every day.
Call for the vote. Okay. All those in favor of the subcommittees that are established in that draft, signify your yes by aye and your negative by no. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. How are we doing for time? I can't see the thing. Okay. Well, we didn't get through everything, but we made progress.
Sure did.
Let me close. Is there just for maybe a couple of minutes, is there anything else about the subcommittees that this was just the suggestion? We've approved that. That doesn't mean there can't be others and more. And so I would ask people to think about that.
I was actually going to talk to you about
Okay. Yes, Dennis.
I just want to say that in the next week sometime, I'll be in touch with the subcommittee, the outreach committee that's on with the surveys, and try to get people to come up with the things that are missing and things that they want deleted, and so we can move that process forward. And remember, it can't serve all the purposes. I think we've established that tonight. But it can help us. We can oversample, we can do some things. So I think it would be a big success for us to get that moved.
So I don't know if you saw in my email, but my understanding that the city council should have received basically today an effort for them to be able to vote March 25th about approving this. So the timing is obviously cattywampus here, but so what will this mean? Does that mean it's going to be you guys will submit it to city council and it'll be deferred till April, delaying the work, or how does this?
I think we can move ahead with the assumption that if the costs are about what we thought, that I can meet with them while I'm still in town, talk through the elements. It would have to be submitted next week, I guess, for the week. Is it a week after? Is that how it works here?
I think so.
But the settlement says this is a COAB project.
Yeah.
So you're just you're helping with the COAB.
Yeah,
to get this done.
I guess that we need permission to do that. While I'm still here in town, the idea was that it's going to have no details in there other than that they would collect the data. It would have 1,000 respondents, and they would oversample African American and Latino communities for now, and that's all it's gonna say. And the content would be developed by the COAB, submitted to them. They would turn the data over to the Copeland COAB, and that's the gist of the scope of work. If people are fine with that, we could get it started. I could talk to the people at City Hall tomorrow while I'm still here, or we can do it later next week. I think the work of the COAB is around the content of this thing and what it is we're doing, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, but I just wanted the co-op to be informed that city council, even though we voted, city council still has to bless this.
Yes.
And they have their, bureaucratic process that we have to also somehow incorporate into our process and be mindful of that when we're facing Department of Justice deadlines. And so I wanted that to be transparent as possible, because I'm not sure everybody's following like the less interesting aspects of some of the stuff that we do, but it matters if they have the power of the purse there, kind of. So,
Senator Gorley.
Yes, I don't know if he is still in the room, Dr. Haynes. No, Dr. Haynes. I do want to acknowledge that we're all in the room because of the work of Dr. Haynes, Dr. Bethel, and all of those folks who make up the AMA Coalition for Police Reform, which is inclusive of Cop Watch and a number of other people who are sitting out here whose names I may not know. And I also want to acknowledge Joanne Hardesty. Again, we're sitting at this table because of the work of Joanne Hardesty, who is also a part of that Coalition for Police Reform. I just want to honor that. I also want to honor what you said earlier, Joanne, about this being an independent organization. And we get to rely on the resources, the resource staff provided by the city of Portland. They're here to serve this group. I understand that, and I hope that we all understand that we have some rich resources in the room, so let's figure out ways to use them and use them intentionally. And as we do that, also honor who they are and what they bring forward to this process.
Thank you. Sharon?
I had a question in regards to Tom's email, I believe, that initiated about the CRC vote from the city. We asked them to postpone the vote. Did we need to bring that up as an additional agenda item to the COAB group? And if it's not tonight, then when? Because we have asked for an extension and a postponement from city council not to vote on that.
Well, let's put it on our agenda.
So I make a motion that we put the discussion of the CRC vote of city council on the agenda for right now. To discuss it right now.
Okay.
Or to be briefed on it, and then we can move.
Seconded. Any discussion?
Well, I think it merits more discussion than can really go on right now. I sent an email out that outlined some of the concerns, primarily concerns that the AMA and the Portland Cop Watch have raised about the CRC over the years, and trying to put some teeth in their authority to actually get to the bottom of police misconduct. And it's a discussion that really needs some time. And I don't know, I've had preliminary contact with Constantine Severe about the matter. I assume they can delay that further, so if we put it on the agenda for next time, I think it'll work.
If I could just take this on. Hi, I'm Constantine Severe, IPR Director, City Auditor's Office. So, due to Mr. Stevenson's request, the auditor pulled that code change. So we're not going to put it back until we've had an opportunity to consult with the COAB. So basically, however your schedule works for us. So I can email you folks, all the COAB, and let you guys know about the code, or actually present at the meeting at your convenience. So however I can be of use to you guys.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, I just want to mention about the PSU. I like to see it get done now as soon as possible. If you're going to be leaving town, maybe you talk to City Hall tomorrow or before you leave town and get the blessings. So I like to see that happen like today. So if we have to take a vote on what we have to do, I'd like to see it. I would like to see that happen for us.
So I think the group has agreed to move forward on it. So if they trust me to work that out with the city, I can do that while I'm here.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I can update you on it. What?
Yeah, we gotta wrap up. I'm happy to hear what Mr. Wolf has to say. Okay.
Can I make a motion? Even though I don't have voting rights?
To adjourn, yes.
He's asking as an alternate.
Okay,
can you make a
I was
motion?
just gonna
I don't know the
just see
answer
if we
to
could go ahead and decide to hold discussion. Because we've got 2 meetings per month, and it's just, I mean, we don't have enough time. I would like to suggest 2 meetings a month because we don't have enough time. I mean, it takes a lot of time to get here, and I know that, and I understand that, but once a month clearly is not enough, and we're having to postpone, and I'm getting a little bit concerned with that, so I'm thinking 2 meetings a month would be helpful.
I second that.
Discussion?
I would propose, if we're gonna, actually, if there is a second on that friendly amendment, that in the interim, maybe for the next couple of months, that might be useful. But the point is that we need to establish subcommittees
Yes, I
immediately.
do like that.
And that's where the work will be done, and we will get out of this cycle. So I don't think it's useful to just establish that as, 2 meetings a month. We all are taxed for time, and there's a lot of other issues. But the real work is going to be run through the subcommittees and the establishment of the executive committee.
So it's amendable.
That's my friendly amendment.
Okay. So, is there a second? I'm running out of time here.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is that the COAB establish meeting, I think, 2 times a month, with the caveat that the most important thing for the COAB to do is to establish these subcommittees and to begin the work on.
There's additional asterisks there that it would be limited to maybe the next 2 months.
Okay.
For the 2 times a month, for the bi-monthly meeting.
Okay.
Not as an indefinite.
You know what, I'm getting tired, I'll let you state it.
So the friendly amendment is that we go with a bi-monthly meeting for the no longer than the next 2 months, so that would be through the end of May. Because the most important thing is to establish these subcommittees immediately, because that's where the world work is going to happen.
Okay. Any further discussion? We'll vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay.
So earlier we talked about possibly putting together some kind of ad hoc committee to come up with a leadership strategy for putting together the executive steering committee. Was that just talked about and not voted on? Or?
I made that suggestion, but I'm not a voting member, and nobody made a motion to do it. I thought it was the way to get this done efficiently, is to have an ad hoc committee that could be working to create the protocols for the establishment of the executive committee, who should, but, yeah, no, it never got voted on. Okay, I think that's all we have, so I'll declare the meeting adjourned.
I just wanted to say that these koosh balls, I want to recognize Providence, their marketing department, frankly, but they heard about us and really wanted to provide some support. So I made contact with them, and they sent us these stress-relieving koosh balls. So please take them home, but I have a whole bunch. I'll bring them each meeting. They also thought we should have really clean hands, so they've got those, anyway, pens and other things over there. But these it should be recognized that Providence Hospital felt strongly that we should have these. So some lifesavers. I know it's been helpful this meeting.
One last comment, just to thank all of you. As a person who had the responsibility of running the meeting, we had a lot of issues, and I appreciate everybody's dedication, commitment, and your thoughtfulness in what we did, and we did get some things accomplished tonight. Thank you.
And Brian is asking you to make sure to leave your name tags and cards here on the table when you leave.